So you want to buy a TV? Where do you start these days? There's so many models, so many technologies. And what's the right time of the year to buy? Should you buy the new models as they come out, or should you wait a year and pick up last year's flagships? We're going to answer all those questions today in our buyer's guide. So welcome to another video here on AVForums. Again, we're here at Peter Tyson in Carlisle, who have kindly opened their doors to allow us to come in and film today, because the subject of the video is how to buy a TV and what time of the year should you buy a TV. So let's ask that question first. What time of the year should you buy a TV? Well, it depends on what you're looking for in terms of your use case. So if it's just a TV that you're after, you want some of the new features, you want to watch feature films, that kind of thing in the dark, but you also want to game and so on, then go for last year's model. Why do you need to go for the latest and greatest? Because you're going to pay a price premium. You're going to get some of the latest features, but not necessarily features that would be of interest to you. It all depends on what it is you're looking for. If you do want the flagship models and you want the latest flagship models, and there's some great TVs coming out every year with little incremental differences and changes and improvements in performance, then absolutely go for those. But I wouldn't buy them right on launch time. I would maybe give it 6 months before taking the plunge. And the reason for that is it gives you an idea of how the market is at that moment in time and what the reviews are like. You know, take a wide pool of reviewers and see how the TVs are performing, but also go to AVForums, because we have a large number of owners threads. So these are people who actually go out and buy these TVs and then use them in their homes and their use cases, and they always report back on the forums and say what's great about the TVs and what's not so good and so on. And of course, as a reviewer, I spend maybe 3 weeks with a TV, and if it's in for a long-term testing, I'll spend a little bit more time with it. And if there are issues that pop out straight away in the first few weeks, we'll tell you about them. But if you go and look at the owners threads on AVForums, these are people who have gone out, paid their own money, bought the TV, and are using it in their own home and watching normal TV and films and so on. So you'll get a better understanding of how that TV actually performs. So the main thing to ask yourself when it comes to buying a TV is, what are you actually using that TV for? If you're not a film fan who's looking to watch in dim surroundings and want, as the director intended, picture quality, then the whole marketplace out there is available to you, and a couple of different technologies are also being used that could suit you. So let's think about your viewing environment. If it's a bright room and you have a lot of ambient light coming in, you don't tend to dim the lights and so on, then an LCD TV is probably a better fix for you. If you do a lot of gaming, an LCD TV might be a better option for you as well. And there's lots of models to think about, lots of technologies to think about when it comes to LCD TVs. So you can have the lower end of the market, where you have a lot of smaller screen sizes, but tend to be global backlights. What I mean by that is that it's just one backlight. It doesn't control any dimming zones or anything like that. And if you're in a bright room, that probably doesn't make a great deal of difference to the image quality. You get lots of good smart features at that level of the market. And from year to year, things don't tend to change that much. You might get the odd bit of technology popping up a little bit further down the ranges, but you will get Dolby Vision on some mid-range TVs. You'll get Dolby Atmos sound. You get most of the things that you need. Then you move up to a FALD set. So that's a full array local dimming, and what that means is that there are sections of the screen that are blocks, and those can dim independently to other areas. Why does it do that? Well, it helps with black levels and picture contrast. And if you think about a bright object on a dark background, what normally happens with an LCD TV, if it's a global backlight, you get a lot of blooming around that object. So you won't get a straight line where the white turns to black. You will in other technologies, like a self-emitting technology like OLED. Each pixel can be black or white next to each other, and you get a really solid edge. With LCD, it doesn't work that way. So the full array local dimming tries to combat that issue by suppressing that blooming and making the contrast look more significant, like when you've got black against white and so on. And then you've got mini LED, so that's the same as a FALD TV, a full array local dimming, but mini LED, which means that in each of these zones, you've got hundreds of mini LEDs in those areas that, again, can be dimmed slightly within each of those zones, and you've got a lot more zones. So you've got a lot more control over the picture. And again, if you like watching films and so on, you'll get the black bars looking black instead of grey, and you'll also get a good deal of brightness and dynamic range in there. And then of course, moving up from there, you've got micro LED, and none of us can afford that unless you're a Premiership footballer at this moment in time. You're talking maybe £100,000 for a decent one of those at the moment from Samsung. So that's technology that's yet to come. So we moved over to the other side of the showroom, and our final technology we're going to talk about in our buyer's guide here, and that's OLED. So what's the difference with OLED? Well, basically the 8.3 million pixels behind me in this 65-inch screen are all independent. They can either be on full or off, and they can be side by side, which gives you an incredible dynamic range. Your dynamic range is from your black to your white, and just the impact that that gives. That's the draw of this technology. And of course, if you've got perfect blacks, when you add colour on top, then you get perfect colour. Now, there are a few drawbacks with all the technologies that we've talked about in our buyer's guides. And of course, like I say, if you want to know about specific models and how they perform, the owners' threads at AVForums are a goldmine of information. So head over and check them out once you've narrowed down your list of TVs. But OLED is still seen as one of the best display technologies available to consumers at this moment in time. We briefly mentioned micro LED, but that's a good 5 to 10 years still away from being at consumer level. So this is the best picture quality for the film fan out there. If you're a film fan, if you want to watch films as they were intended to be seen, and you watch in a dark room or dark environment for the majority of the time, then this is the technology for you. You have two manufacturers mainly in the area that produce these panels, but lots of manufacturers buy those panels in and produce their own TVs. So even though they might have an LG or a Samsung panel on them, their picture processing is then added on top of that, and their picture flavouring and so on. So don't assume that if you're buying a Panasonic TV, it's just a rebadged LG. That's not the case. Panasonic do their own engineering, add their own heatsink, proprietary heatsink technology to them, and do a whole load of other things. So don't make the assumption that these TVs are rebadged. They're not. So there's two main manufacturers of the panels: LG Display, who are different from LG Electronics. So LG Electronics behind us are the people that put the TVs together and sell them. LG Display are a separate company who develop the display technology, develop these panels, and then they sell them to a wider range of customers. And you've guessed, Samsung Display are the other manufacturer of OLED technology, but they make QD OLED. And again, it's Samsung Display who create that panel and make that panel. It's not Samsung Electronics who sell you the TV. So it is a little bit confusing when you start getting into that area and looking at things in finer detail. But basically, there are the two slightly different OLED technologies. So what is different between the two OLED technologies? Well, one is called WRGB OLED, and that's produced by LG Display, like the TV behind me. And the slight differences are that the LG panel behind me uses a white pixel to boost its brightness, whereas the QD OLED, it has a blue OLED panel, and then it has a layer of quantum dots on top, so red and green quantum dots. And that's where you get your RGB colours from. So slightly different ways of the technology. So what's the advantages? Well, the LG panel behind me will get brighter. It's the brightest TV on the market. It's the brightest panel in the market with the heat sinks and everything else on there, but it doesn't have as wide a colour volume. And that means that when you start to look at the brighter colours, and not a lot of content actually has really bright colours in it at the moment, but further down the line that may become an issue, but it doesn't quite reach the same colour brightness. Whereas the Samsung, using QD OLED, it has a much wider colour volume, which means it can give you more tones of colour at higher brightness levels. These are great panels, they're great screens, and if you're a film fan, this is the technology for you because of the dynamic range, because of the colour volume, because of the motion. They are really, really, really good TVs. So that's your TV technologies, that's your choices. Let's catch up with John from Peter Tyson, and let's find out a little bit more and deep dive into the subject.
So the best time to buy a TV very much depends on yourself. If you're one of these customers that wants the latest greatest thing, then you're going to wait for the latest model regardless of what anybody says. But for the most of us, we like to save a bit of money. So it's actually quite a good idea to buy last year's tech or last year's model, because you are going to save a significant amount of cash. If you're looking at buying a TV, my honest advice is to go and experience it for yourself. Go into a dealer, not necessarily Peter Tyson's, but like this place, where you're going to find some friendly people who can help you and guide you in what you need to do. Watch some material that you're familiar with, watch some YouTube clips, some standard definition TV, it doesn't matter, because that's the kind of thing that you're going to watch at home. There's no point watching glossy demo material, because that's not what you consume in your living room. And one thing, if you are going to go into a store like this, don't go into a store and buy online. That's naughty. It's best to support that dealer. If they've helped you, give them your support, even if you have to negotiate a price or whatever it is that you do. It's nice to support that dealer who's giving you that help, if it's got you over the line and made you make a good decision on something that you're going to love for a long time. Final thing with buying a TV, it's got to be right for you. You're taking it home, you're watching it, not the salesperson, not the online reviewer. So decide on what you like, try it for yourself, and spend some time and do your research. Look on forums like the AVForums. That's a wealth of information on like-minded people who may have bought the same set, and you'll be able to get the real world pros and cons on that TV. And that's it. You've just got to decide for yourself and do your research.
So that wraps up our buying guide, and as you'll notice, we didn't mention any years or model numbers and so on, because, well, the advice remains the same year on year when it comes to buying a TV. At the end of the day, it's up to you and what you want from your viewing experience, and hopefully we've covered all the technologies that are relevant and will be relevant for a number of years going forward, and that includes what you should be looking at in terms of your use case and what you should be buying. If it's at the flagship end of the market, you will save money buying last year's model. You'll do the same lower down, and that's where you get the big deals as well, because a lot of these models do change on a yearly basis, and there's not a hell of a lot of difference between them in terms of, you know, technologies and so on. You might get small incremental improvements. Our thanks again to Peter Tyson. Of course, there's other dealers out there. We're not sponsored on this video, and this is not Peter Tyson paying for this video. They've just opened the doors to us, as they always do, our friends over here in Carlisle, and we've made use of the facilities. But they are fantastic facilities, and if you can find yourself a really good dealer who has good facilities and who will look after you, it makes the buying process a lot easier at the end of the day, because you can see the product, you can get hands on, you can ask for advice, and of course head over to AVForums, look at the owners threads if you decide on which models you want to look at, and see what real people out there are saying about their TVs when they've used them for some length of time. So hopefully you get something from this guide. Thank you very much for watching. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.